What's going on, everybody? Happy game day. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Appreciate you making Pack-A-Day part of your game day routine. Today, we've got Packers-Rams. We are going to cover it in depth. We're going to go over everything to watch in this game. Before we get there, first of all, thank you to Greg Freese for becoming a brand new Pack-A-Day podcast YouTube member. If you haven't checked out those memberships yet, what are you waiting for? Today is a perfect day to do so. Also, we've got our Luigi's Pizza player to watch in this one. Listen, we talked about this guy all week, Rashan Gary. Everyone's been waiting for this impact. 1 sack in the last 11 games, 1.5 sacks in the last 12 games. However you want to view it, however you want to look at it, the impact has not been there from a player that you're expecting to be an impact player. Today, he gets Rob Havenstein from the Rams. Good player, solid player, not great player. Arguably I'll just say easiest offensive lineman that he has gone against one-on-one all season long. Now, expect the Rams to potentially chip a lot like the Vikings did last week, and we know that Rashan Gary gets a bunch of attention, but Green Bay needs an impact from one of their impact players in Rashan Gary. This is the type of game that he has the ability to have one of those 1, 2, 3 sack performances. And that might sound like a lot for a guy that's had 1 sack in his last 11 games. I get that, but these are the type of games where he needs to have those flash plays, those impact plays, those game-changing, game-altering moments. It doesn't have to be a sack. And I'll say that again. I don't care if it is, he ends the day with 1.5 sacks or whatever it might be. If he can go out and make an impact on this game and cause havoc and pressures and everything else, that's fine. He can have a massive game without registering a sack. But Green Bay needs an impact from Rashan Gary. This is the key player in this one. This is the player that I will be watching. And I know that these players hear the storylines throughout the course of the week. I guarantee you that Rashan Gary heard the buzz of the 1 sack in 11 games, etc. He's going to go out. He's going to be motivated. And I guarantee you that he's going to be doing everything in his power to try to be that impact player. Hopefully it happens this week and Rashan Gary goes out and gets the Luigi's Pizza player of the game on tomorrow or on our grades episode later in the week. But either way, expecting a big game from Rashan Gary, and hopefully he can break out of his funk a little bit and have that performance that we've been waiting for. If you have not checked out or tried Luigi's Frozen Pizza yet, make sure to do so. And of course, follow them on Twitter at Luigi's Pizza, Luiges. And of course, if the Packers win, it's Luigi's Victory Monday. Tweet hashtag Luigi's Victory Monday. Follow Pack-A-Day Podcast, follow Luigi's on Twitter, and you will be entered to win a case of frozen pizzas, which, what is better in life than that? All right, let's get to this game and specifically some of the transactions that took place prior to the game on Saturday. The first one, the big one, Romeo Doubs was suspended by the Packers for 1 game. And we talked about yesterday, I went over the different things that could happen on Saturday. Does he get on the flight? Does he not get on the flight? Does he report back to the team? Do the Packers suspend him? There were all of these different options that would be out there for how this could sort of take place. This is not necessarily, I think, the one that anyone wanted per se, but he was suspended by the team for 1 game for content detrimental to the team, or conduct detrimental to the team, I should say, and did not fly with the team to LA. And the spin on it from Green Bay was that this is a 1-week thing. They're excited to get Romeo back in the fold next week. It was an unfortunate series of events, etc. We'll see. We'll see how this works next week for Romeo and the Packers. This will definitely be a story that's worth keeping an eye on over the course of next week. It could be done, just like we saw with Jair. Right. And when we talked yesterday about it, we talked about best case scenario. And I said, best case scenario is probably the Jair scenario. They meet this head on, they suspend him, they talk to him, they sit him down, they discuss expectations. And then Romeo handles it basically like Jair did. As a complete professional, he understands what he did was not the right way of going about things, that he cost the team, and he works his butt off to get back in good graces and find his role back in this team. That's the best case scenario. And Green Bay and Romeo Doubs come out better because of it. But that is really entirely up to Romeo Doubs. Like, how he responds to this will go a long way. He could say, I want out, just like we talked about last year. Like, Jair could have done that. Jair could have said, no, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with this team anymore. And he didn't. He said, nope, I was wrong. And he made the corrections. But that's not everyone. Not everyone's going to handle that in the same way. We have no idea how Romeo will handle this. And quite frankly, we have no idea how Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst and company will handle this on their side. Let's be real. There is a difference between Jair Alexander and Romeo Doubs. Whatever Green Bay was hoping and expecting for out of Romeo Doubs, in his prime, he's not on the level of, at least thus far, on what Jair Alexander's prime is. More importantly, Jair at corner is a very unique and important piece to this defense. Romeo Doubs, not on this offense, is workable. Like, you have the receivers, tight ends, running backs, where if Romeo doesn't play a game again this season, you still have the weapons. I'm not saying it's the best case scenario. I would love Romeo to come back and be a key piece in this offense. I'm not saying that the desired outcome here is Romeo off the team, but there's a path forward, if need be, without Romeo Doubs. So two very different situations and scenarios. And if Romeo, does not come back the way that Green Bay is expecting from this, or if Green Bay is just frustrated enough where they're like, you know what, we need to set precedent here and go in a different direction, they could do so. So yes, 1 game suspension. The narrative on it right now is that he's going to be back next week and hopefully everything's good to go. And I agree. Hopefully that is the case, but it's going to be worth monitoring, and we'll see how this entire saga continues with Romeo and the Packers next week after the suspension, and most importantly, how Romeo responds to that. As far as this game, Romeo clearly out. We'll get to the transactions next. I think one of the more interesting things is Green Bay did not elevate a wide receiver in this game, which potentially leaves them with 4. More on that in just a moment. There are 2 other transactions. They signed Robert Rochelle. Now, interesting here, he was not elevated from the practice squad, meaning they get 2 elevations every week, and he was not one of their practice squad elevations. They signed him straight on to the 53-man roster with the roster spot that Romeo Doubs occupied. When they suspended him, a roster spot opens up, and that allows them to put Robert Rochelle into that spot. Why it's interesting is when you get to after this week and Romeo Doubs is back, you would need to make a transaction, right? Theoretically, that would be Robert Rochelle, and then you subject him to waivers in season. Now, it's not a huge deal because when Robert Rochelle is on the practice squad, he's basically subjected to every other team at all times anyway. So any team can just pick him up off of Green Bay's practice squad. So it's mostly apples to apples. I do think sometimes when teams see a player on waivers, like, oh yeah, we'll just claim him or whatever, like there's a little bit more of an ease there. But they could have just elevated him, and they did not. They actually put him on the 53. It could mean that maybe they want Rochelle on the 53 regardless, and maybe there's going to be a different roster move that comes next week. That could be the case. Or it could just be that they didn't want to use another elevation on Robert Rochelle, since every player only gets 3 elevations through the course of the season. I think that's probably the more likely scenario there, but they will have to make a corresponding roster move next week when Romeo Doubs comes back. Green Bay could also be thinking, odds are there's probably going to be some injury or somebody that we have to put on IR or some other transaction that could take place. So we'll figure that out later, and that could be the case as well. The one player that they did elevate was Andrew Beck. We talked about that with Luke Musgrave being questionable, that it would likely either be Andrew Beck or it would be the other tight end on the roster whose name is escaping me for the moment, Messiah Swinson. Sorry about that. And, I thought it could go either way of whether it would be Swinson or Beck. It's funny because I talked about at wide receiver, if they elevated a 5th wide receiver, it would probably be special teams oriented. I think this is probably the scenario here where Andrew Beck gives them the special teams ability. He also has that fullback, H-back, tight end ability, that kind of like a Josiah DeGuara a little bit. So this probably gives you a little bit more versatility on game day. He's more of a veteran player. Swinson just got back to Green Bay about a week ago. So this makes a little bit more sense. And again, I think gives them a few more options with how to use him on an actual game day. But Andrew Beck elevated. They did have one more elevation to use, and they did not use it. And if you go back to the injury report, remember Devontae Wyatt was out. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were doubtful. We now know Romeo is out suspended. Questionable, Jair Alexander, Edgerrin Cooper, Jonathan Ford, Elton Jenkins, Jordan Morgan, Luke Musgrave, and Carrington Valentine. We did learn that Jonathan Ford was not brought back from injured reserve, so he will stay on IR this week. He still has 2 weeks left. He was not brought back to the roster for this game, but not elevated were a wide receiver, right? That was, I think, the most interesting one. And no linebacker elevated as well. Now, Christian Watson is the intriguing one here. He was doubtful, but they did not elevate a wide receiver. If Christian Watson does not play, which is my expectation, I don't expect Christian Watson to play in this one, that would leave them with just 4 wide receivers. Malik Heath, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, and Bo Melton. That's it. No 5th wide receiver. I think that's totally doable, by the way. It's not, they don't even go much 4 wide receiver set. The primary looks are 3 wide, right? And then they go a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. They don't even go much 4 wide. So, if you would lose a wide receiver, yes, maybe there's a few plays, whatever, that you would not have 4 wide receivers for. They don't do any 5 wide. And even if you did do a 5 wide, a true spread, formation with everyone out, it probably has a tight end in there, right? Like Tucker Kraft. So I don't think that this is like a terrible decision by any means. If they didn't think that any of those other wide receivers were worthy of being activated or were going to add much on teams, then you don't need to activate them. And I think they're probably wise just to go with the 4 guys that are on the roster right now. But it will be interesting to see, is there a surprise, return from Christian Watson? Could he play? Again, I don't think so, but kind of worth monitoring with the fact that they only have 4 wide receivers on the roster. The cornerback being elevated is interesting. Remember, both Jair and Carrington Valentine questionable. Does this mean one of those guys doesn't play? Or does this mean that they just value Robert Rochelle so much on special teams? And with Valentine and Jair being questionable, maybe they're both on snap counts, or they're, a little bit worried about maybe the potential of re-injury, and just give them a little bit more depth. That could be the case as well, but that'll be worth monitoring. No tight end, no linebacker elevated, which could mean that Edgerrin Cooper is good to go. The tight end elevated probably means that Luke Musgrave not good to go. And again, Jonathan Ford stays on IR. The names to watch on the inactive list: Jair Alexander, Edgerrin Cooper, Jordan Morgan, Luke Musgrave, Carrington Valentine, and Christian Watson. I think those are the names to just keep a little bit of an extra ear out for when we see those inactives come out an hour and a half before kickoff. My predicted inactives for this one: Devontae Wyatt, Christian Watson, Luke Musgrave, Travis Glover, Brenton Cox, either Andre Dillard or Jordan Morgan. If Morgan is healthy, then probably Dillard is deactivated. If Morgan is not healthy, then he gets deactivated and Dillard is probably active on the roster, but probably one of those two. And then you could potentially, if one of those corners or Edgerrin Cooper are not ready, they could be on that list. And then you bring back a Brenton Cox or a Travis Glover or something like that. That would be your other option. All right, I have 8 keys in this one. Usually I do 12, right? Usually I do 12 keys to the game. I think this one is a little bit more straightforward. I was looking at, throwing a couple other things on there, and it felt like just talking for the sake of talking. So I didn't want to add, 2 or 4 things to watch just to reach a quota that doesn't exist, right? So to me, there are 8 keys in this one. So let's start them and go over it. To me, Packers defensive line versus Rams offensive line is number 1A on this list. Here's the Rams offensive line, left to right. Alaric Jackson at left tackle, solid player, not maybe too different than Rasheed Walker. I think Rasheed Walker is better, but not maybe super different, but an opportunity there to win against Alaric Jackson. Logan Bruss, below average left guard. Bo Limmer, below average center. Kevin Dotson's a solid right guard. Rob Havenstein's an average-ish right tackle. It's not a great offensive line. They're completely beat up. They've got a couple backups that are in there, and this is a group that struggles in run blocking, struggles in pass protecting, isn't great as a collective, and has a quarterback that's not super mobile. This is the week that Rashan Gary, Preston Smith, LVN, Kingsley, and Igbare have to win on the edges. And then I think on the interior, Kenny Clark, Carl Brooks, TJ Slayton, Colby Wooden, they have to win on the interior. The 2 weak points are probably Bo Limmer and Logan Bruss. Those are the 2 that I think you can probably have a little bit more success against. But this cannot be a situation where the Rams offensive line mauls Green Bay's defensive line and really gets that run game going for Kyren Williams. That would be a disaster. Or you end up with Matthew Stafford just sitting in the pocket. And here's the thing. Yeah, we can talk about Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua being out and not available for this game. If you allow Matthew Stafford time in the pocket, it could be you, me, and your random lunch lady, male person, whoever else at wide receiver, and Matthew Stafford will find a way to be successful. Like, you give him enough time in the pocket, and he will find open players, and he will beat you. So this is a matchup. Green Bay's defensive line has not lived up to expectations so far. The Rams' offensive line is beat up and not that great. if the Rams offensive line controls this matchup somehow, it gives the Rams a huge advantage. It gives what should be a weakness all of a sudden, a huge boost. And again, allows Kyren Williams probably to run the ball better and Matthew Stafford time in the pocket. Those are two recipes for disaster for Green Bay. And we can talk about a new scheme, a 4-3, Jeff Hafley, how Xavier McKinney's playing, the return of Jair Alexander and Carrington. None of those things matter if you can't win up front. The game is more often than not, turnovers number 1A, right? But it is won in the trenches. And this is a matchup that Green Bay needs to win in the trenches. They haven't done a good enough job of it on the defensive side of the ball all year long, save for basically a quarter and a half against Tennessee. I need to see an aggressive, attacking, physical, violent, dominating Packers defensive line in this one. And to me, that is 1A. And again, it goes back to why Rashan Gary is our Luigi's Pizza player to watch in this one. Number 2, you have to limit the big plays. And specifically, be careful with Tutu Atwell. If it were me in this one, with how you utilize the safeties, I'm going with Xavier McKinney as my post safety the majority of this one. And I understand the desire to move Xavier McKinney around, put him in different spots, and allow him to be more of a playmaker and just kind of come, in from all different angles and, not being able to track him and keep an eye on him quite as easily and not know where he is at all times. I understand the value to all of that. To me, you've got a rookie safety and what Jeff Hafley just called the best safety in the league. I have faith that Javon Bullard up towards the line of scrimmage, where Jeff Hafley said he's best anyway, which I completely agree with. I think he has the ability to make plays in that spot, and I trust him in that area. And I believe that he can help stop Kyren Williams in the run game. And again, be that guy that you kind of use like Xavier McKinney all over the place and not sure where he's going to be. I still trust Javon Bullard in that role, but I want to make sure that I'm not giving up those explosives. And to me, keeping Xavier McKinney as your deep safety to one, give you that center fielder that can get sideline to sideline and hopefully limit some of those deep shots, keeping him deeper than the deepest, and allowing him to be the last line of defense if all of a sudden a player does break through a Kyren Williams or a Tutu Atwell on a short play that starts to go for a bigger gain. I trust Xavier McKinney to take the right angle and get that player to the ground and make that a 20, 30-yard gain rather than a 60, 70-yard touchdown. And I think if you make the Rams go the length of the field, they are going to struggle to put up like a big number. I think they could get in the low 20s in this one, but if you limit their big plays, I really think that it's going to be a tough time. And I think there's a much bigger chance that the Rams end up closer to, 16, 17, 18 points, somewhere in that range, rather than, in the low to mid 20s. So limit those big plays, make the Rams go the distance of the field. And by the way, you're not hearing me say be passive overall. I'm not saying keep Javon Bullard and Xavier McKinney in too high safety all day. Matt Stafford will pick you apart that way. I'm just saying have Javon Bullard be the guy that's closer to the box. Let Xavier McKinney be the safe safety and just limit those big plays overall. Number 3, Kyren Williams can have a good day in this game. Like if you told me he went like 25 for 100, now maybe 25, maybe not, just because that means the Rams were able to stay balanced and whatever. But like if he has, close to 100 yards in this one, maybe a touchdown, you can survive this game. He's going to have to be their big time playmaker. He's going to be the guy that they have to lean on. You can allow him a 4-yard average and, 100 yards, maybe a touchdown, and it not be the worst thing in the world. You cannot have Kyren Williams have a great day. You can't let this be, 20 carries for 140 yards and like a 7-yard average and 2 or 3 touchdowns. You have to limit him. He's like with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out, he's the playmaker that you have to limit. And I get Matthew Stafford is always going to strike fear in you just because of his arm talent and where he can get the ball at any given play. But they're going to set Matthew Stafford up by running the football and making Kyren Williams the focal point of this offense. We've seen the run defense be a little bit shaky. We just talked about the defensive line and the matchup against the Rams offensive line. There's a matchup that Green Bay's defensive front could and should win. Now, dominate the line of scrimmage. Go out and make sure that Kyren Williams is not having his great day. Again, if he has an average to good day, it's fine. He's a really good running back, and we know that's going to be the focal point of the Rams offense. You can survive that. But it can't be a big day for Kyren Williams. So you can't be talking about Kyren Williams being one of the biggest fantasy players on the day. We can't be talking about a career day for that's your recipe for losing. So control Kyren Williams. He can be, again, solid, good. He can have his normal day. You just can't let him have a great day and really kind of take over this one. Number 4, I'm going to put this ever so eloquently. Make your damn kicks. Point production's important. Breaking news. You got to be able to put your extra points through. You got to be able to get field goals when you got 37 yarders. And it's just such a buzzkill for the entire team when you're not making your kicks. I mean, you go back to last week. Yeah, Minnesota scores first, right? They get the touchdown right away. Green Bay drives all the way down. Beautiful 10-play drive. And they're going to go back, respond, get 3 points. It's a 7-3 game. Your defense gets on the field, and they're going to go and try to do everything in their power to limit Minnesota and hopefully get off the field. And the momentum stays. You're playing still a brand of complementary football at that point. It's not perfect. It's not the way that you want to start down 4 with Minnesota having the ball, but it's not the worst case scenario in the world. You knew this was going to be a difficult matchup. And missing that field goal early on, you have no points from it. It sucks the air out of the building. Minnesota goes down and scores a touchdown right away. It's 14-0, and now the game already feels not lost, but in a really bad spot, and you're already pressing. And then, of course, it's 21-0, and it just spirals from there. Not only that, like the Green Bay's 2 losses so far have involved missed kicks by Braden Narvison in like games where they lost by very small margins. These things matter in the NFL in a very significant way. Not only are these are points taken off the board, these are turnovers really as well, because you're giving them the ball with good field position off of a missed field goal. So make your damn kicks. It's going to be ultra important. And in a game like this where you're expected to win, you're on the road, and you want to really just kind of take care of business against the Rams, missed kicks, missed points, not getting points when you're expected to is a way to let that spiral in a different direction and really keep the Rams in it and give them momentum. So again, as eloquently as I can say it, make your damn kicks. Number 5, just a matchup I'm sort of excited to watch in this one. Jared Verse versus Rasheed Walker. Jared Verse is a tremendous rookie, really smart draft pick by the Rams. He has been as advertised, really physical player, can win at the point of attack, will go right through your face, convert speed to power, good effort in the run game. He was the NFC Rookie of the Month for September, Defensive Rookie of the Month. And I think this is a matchup with Rasheed Walker that's important. Now, Rasheed's been a little bit up and down, mostly due to penalties. His actual pass protection has been really good. He's been a solid run blocker. He's playing good, solid football. He's just got to avoid the penalties. This is a tough matchup. Jared Verse, to me, is their most talented defender along that defensive front. Byron Young is good. Braden Fisk, their second-round pick, is good as well. They've got some nice young players on that front, but Jared Verse is the big one. You got to make sure that he's not taking over the game, and you got to make sure that Rasheed Walker hopefully wins that battle. And if so, that gives Green Bay a huge leg up. But if he can't, if he's getting all the penalties again or Verse takes over, it could mean that you have to chip with a tight end or a running back, and it could just kind of change your game plan a little bit. So Jared Verse, Rasheed Walker, key matchup in this one. Number 6 for Green Bay, get Josh Jacobs involved early and often. We saw last week, right, just how impactful he was with the ball in his hands, but because of the score, it dictated that you were going to have to pass a little bit more, and you got the ball not in Jacobs' hands as much as you would have liked, and I think it affects the offense. Not only does this allow you to stay balanced, but it's getting one of your best playmakers the football, which is always a good thing. So get him involved early, let him do his thing. The run blocking's been really good through the course of this season so far. We saw the Indianapolis game and what this offensive line has the ability to do. Go out, win your matchups up front, get Josh Jacobs the ball early, set the tone, let him be a playmaker. You've only got 4 wide receivers active. You're likely without Watson, and we know you're without Doubs. Let Josh Jacobs do a little heavy lifting in this one. That doesn't mean Emmanuel Wilson can't be involved and that you can't rotate these guys, but you got to make Josh Jacobs a focal point of this offense this week. Number 7, this should go without saying, limit the self-inflicted wounds. The Packers have done a great job of beating themselves in the 2 losses because they're the ones that have been making these huge mistakes. Needs to be a cleaner game from Jordan. I would love to see a 0-pick day, a day where he doesn't put the ball in danger. We've seen through 2 games so far, a couple plays that were a little bit uncharacteristic. We've got to make sure that Josh Jacobs is holding on to the football. Receivers aren't dropping passes. Again, kickers aren't missing kicks. You're not dropping interceptions that are thrown right to you. We can go on and on. These are the sort of mistakes that we have seen through 4 weeks from Green Bay so far. I get it's a young team. I get it's early in the season, but these are the things that kill you. This Packers coaching staff has done a great job of putting the players in positions to be successful. Now the players have to go out and execute at the level that they are capable of executing at, limit the self-inflicted wounds, limit the mistakes, and go out. And that gets us to our final key to this one. Number 8, not anything super scientific. Take care of business. This is a team that you should beat 95 times out of 100. I don't care if it's on the road. Green Bay has the better roster. They have the more talent. Yes, they have some injuries in this one and a suspension, whatever. The Rams are far more beat up. They don't have two of their best players in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. This is a very winnable game. And more often than not, if Green Bay would lose this game, it would be due to what we just discussed, the self-inflicted wounds. You've got the little bit of a distraction with Romeo Doubs this week and the suspension. You know, you don't want this season all of a sudden to be 2-3. The Doubs thing in the background. This is not the way that you want to start. This is not the way that you want to, again, kick off basically quarter 2 of this season. Go out to the West Coast against a Rams team that is not as good as you, with a crowd that will be very pro-Packers, and figure out a way to get this win. I'm not looking for artistry points here. I don't care if this is a 20-point win or a 1-point win. Go to LA, take care of business, get this win, get headed in the right direction. Start finding a foothold and a rhythm to the season, which has been near impossible so far through 4+ weeks. Bizarro Brazil game with the slippery field and everything, and a lot of self-inflicted wounds. 2 games with a backup quarterback, then having to reinsert Jordan Love in, and going against a very tough defense in Minnesota. And again, a lot more self-inflicted wounds in week 4. Now you've got the Romeo Doubs thing hanging in the background. Like, it's been an odd start to the year. And obviously some injuries playing a part in there as well, including to Jordan Love. Get the win, take care of business. Let's get this season back on track. Hopefully get Romeo back next week and just get this thing sort of started in a brand new direction. So as simply as I can put it, again, nothing scientific, no X's or O's here. Just go down, go to LA, take care of business, get the win, get the season back on track. And I would love, I just said no style points needed, win by 1, I don't care. But man, it would be nice if they could just go and have like a 31-10 win in this one. I'm not expecting that. I think the Rams are going to put up a heck of a fight still. But man, it would be nice to just maybe take out some frustrations, limit those self-inflicted wounds, not have anything be a distraction, and get that huge win. And again, start getting the season trending in the right direction. So my 8 keys, just really quick one more time. Green Bay's defensive line versus the Rams' offensive line. Limit the big plays and specifically watch for Tutu Atwell. Kyron Williams can have a good day. He cannot have a great day. Make your damn kicks. Jared Verse versus Rasheed Walker. Get Josh Jacobs involved early and often. Limit the self-inflicted wounds and take care of business. My prediction, Packers are 3-point favorites in this one. I'm going Packers 24, Rams 20. Packers pick up a win. I think the Rams maybe get a touchdown late in this one, maybe like a 24-13 game, and then the Rams get like a late touchdown. I guess that doesn't make total sense because they would probably go for 2 then. So, we'll change it on the fly. We're going to go Packers 24, Rams 19. We're going to say that 2-point conversion lets the Packers, the failed 2-point conversion by the Rams at the end, lets the Packers cover the spread. So Packers 24, Rams 19. Again, maybe 24-13. Rams score a late touchdown in kind of garbage time, get the 6, go for 2, miss the 2, and that's how they get to 19. So Packers 24, Rams 19. I'm going to do a live pregame show at about 11 a.m. Central Time prior to the noon game. So probably go for about an hour. So make sure to check that out. And then the plan is to go live immediately following the game as well and break down everything that we saw and what should be and hopefully is a Packers victory over the LA Rams on Sunday. What more could you want? It's Packers game day. Enjoy this one, everyone. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Shea Dad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Dan Miller, Alex Sawang, Arnaldo Espinoza, Peter Ataka, SoCal Pack, Dan Guestford, Love and Football, Jay Zimmerman, B Brown, and Jay Foreman. I will see you guys all pregame for the live show. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.